So Matt Gaetz is gone, and while Democrats feel good for a second, they need to keep the pressure on. And while it's always good to get someone like Rapey McForehead, what does it really mean? Was this a Machiavellian move by Trump, offering up Gaetz to distract from what he really wanted? No, because Trump can't finish a game of Wordle, much less plan a multi-layered psychological assault on his enemies. So did the Democrats win, or did the Republicans lose? And of course, what's next? Sure, Tulsi is a Russian asset. Marco's a spineless little boy. RFK called Trump a Nazi. Kristi Noem is a puppy killer. Doug Burgum, you don't know who he is, do you? Well, he doesn't believe in climate change. Oz is a Turkish citizen, and he's in their army. That's true. Google it. McMahon, she has some CTE issues. Elon's a mental case, and Hegseth wants women in their place, which apparently is in his bed with him on top of them. But Gaetz, he was the winner when it came to laying a log in the bed. He hit the perv trifecta, young girls, cocaine, and crossing state lines. And putting him in charge of the Justice Department, that'd have been like putting RFK in charge of vaccines. Oh, wait. So what straw broke the rapist back, and why didn't Trump support him in the crunch? Anyway, Trump is a fairly prolific rapist himself. He kicked Matt out the door, and now there are two looming questions. Who will Trump nominate? I mean, does he have any friends who aren't thieves or child rapists? And what will Gaetz do? I guess he could teach junior high. If the Democrats won anything here, remember this. Trump could appoint Mike Flynn, the former Trump head of intelligence who wanted to steal the election outright and is now a convicted felon. So what did they accomplish? Well, for starters, Gaetz was a bad guy. A guy who not only was a walking, talking obscenity of a person, but someone who was ready to roll over and play Trump's Barbie doll by dropping all the charges, something the next attorney general will most definitely do. And as you probably know, Trump is facing court dates on creating an insurrection and stealing government documents and not returning them. And the first thing his AG will do is drop the charges. And that's why Trump likes Gaetz. He needs someone he can control, and Rapey McForehead's spine is about as strong as Richard Simmons' aerobics class. Bottom line, Republicans are in a quandary. They fought for Trump because they didn't have the balls to stick with Haley or any other quasi-pre-Trump conservative, and then found themselves stuck with supporting a guy who plied a 17-year-old girl with coke before paying her for sex with his adopted son's PayPal account. Lindsey Graham and others displayed the thinness of their moral skin. I mean, seriously, at what point does a Republican say no mas? How do you reconcile supporting a child rapist while having a conscience? Easy. You fire your conscience. There was a time, not that long ago, that the Attorney General was independent of the President's wishes and demands. They would resign before capitulation. But now, look at this list of sycophants. And as bad as they are, most will be confirmed. And while Democrats won the first battle, it doesn't seem likely there will be many more victories, with the possible exception of RFK and Hegseth, both learning about what not to say in front of a camera. Although if this hump starts dragging Hispanic mothers and children from their homes, there may yet be a moment for Democrats to again gain the higher ground. And instead of being the party of trans bathrooms only, they might instead flush MAGA back where they belong.
It's the enemy from within.
Yes.
Damn right.
This isn't their Republican Party anymore.
This is not a normal election.
Whether the women like it or not.
Suck my fat one.
Who's with me?
Trust me.
Shut the fuck up, Dan.
Who's with me? Oh, yeah, the lie.
Indictable.
Out of sheer morbid curiosity, I'm allowing this freak show to continue.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Tick-tock.
We're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.
Joe Scarboro on Morning Joe, the same Joe Scarboro who has spent years branding himself as a Trump critic, says that after his controversial trip to Mar-a-Lago, he has been flooded with phone calls. And not just any phone calls, mind you. The phone calls are from literally around the world, he says, with very supportive, very positive people telling him it was so good when he and Mika Brzezinski went down to Mar-a-Lago and kissed the ring. Here is Joe Scarboro explaining it. Don't be confused, even though there is endless criticism of what he and Mika did, the epitome of access journalism. He wants us to believe they're calling him, and everybody is just thrilled at what he did. People from Switzerland called Joe and said, "Sir, it was so good when you went down and bowed before Trump and kissed the ring. We loved it." In Malaysia, they called him and they said, "Joe, Mika, we're so thrilled you went down to Florida." There you go. Flooded with phone calls from around the world. It is starting to sound a lot like those Trumpian Sir stories. You know the ones I'm talking about? "Sir, I've never seen anything like it. People are crying. Sir, I'm hearing from the generals," except this time it's Joe Scarboro playing the part of Sir rather than Donald Trump. But here's where it gets really rich. Despite the feedback to their trip to Mar-a-Lago to reopen communications with Trump, that's what they said they did, apparently it's not going so well online. Because the comments on this particular segment where they explain how great everything is, the comments are disabled. That's right. No comments allowed. So I'm guessing the feedback they were getting was not exactly the flood of positivity that Joe was talking about. Now, as we mentioned on the bonus show yesterday, and by the way, if you're not a member, what better time to join than now? This is just about the most bottom of the barrel example of access journalism that you could imagine. It's not reporting. It's not analysis. It is overt, naked, cozying up to power for the sake of being close to power. And what's worse is that the clip that started the whole thing, they acknowledge we didn't even get an interview with Trump. We just went down to privately suck up to the... All right, you get the point. It's just like when her dad, Zbigniew Brzezinski, would speak to global leaders that he didn't necessarily agree with. So this is what started it all. They went to Mar-a-Lago for what? To hang out with Trump? To schmooze? To make up after years of calling him dangerous? They jet down to Florida for a little Mar-a-Lago meet and greet. So this is indeed access journalism in its purest, most distilled, atavistic form. The idea that you need to maintain a relationship with power, even with someone like Trump, just in case you need the access down the road. But the problem is that when you play the game, you are not holding power accountable. You're actually enabling it. And don't forget that this is the same show that gave Trump untold amounts of free airtime during the 2016 campaign, and then spent years trying to rebrand themselves as part of the pro-Biden resistance. And now they're at it again. So they're at Mar-a-Lago, soaking in the flood of positive calls that Joe is getting. Sir, we in New Zealand are thrilled that you went down there. So what's happening here is obvious. It's not journalism. It's not even really entertaining. It's a grab for relevance as MSNBC ratings sink, dressed up as a global event. The world was thrilled that we reopened lines of communication with Trump. And the fact that they're disabling comments just proves that they know exactly how ridiculous this whole thing looks. So we're doing everything we can to generate a real critical ecosystem on the left, not the I'm a former Republican, but I don't like Trump and I'll kind of help Biden. But now that Trump's back in power, I want to be on Trump's good side. That's not what we're building. I told you about it yesterday. It's called Chorus. We're going to do everything we can to build a real progressive ecosystem to try to keep these people accountable. I'll say more about that soon. In the interim, if you're as disgusted by this Morning Joe stunt as we are, just make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show.
These days, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is angry, it may be thanks to this. Trump picks Governor Kristi Noem to serve as Homeland Security Secretary. But much of MAGA world thought the job of DHS Secretary would go to Greene. While Greene laughed on election night, associates say she now feels humiliated. Furthermore, Greene reportedly wanted the DHS Secretary gig and thought her long-standing focus on immigration would land her the job. But now, instead of Greene running DHS, it will be Kristi Noem, whose most prominent security and law enforcement experience includes executing a dog. In fact, it was so intense that Noem, who was once considered to be on Donald Trump's shortlist for vice presidential running mate, was removed. But things get even worse for Marjorie Taylor Greene, because Greene also wanted to be considered by the Trump campaign for the vice presidential slot. And Greene got snubbed on that as well, and was reportedly never even asked to submit any background materials or vetting documents, even as MAGA world mouthpieces kept talking up Greene. Former Trump aide Steve Bannon, who spoke to Greene, told NBC News she sees herself on the shortlist for Trump's VP. But getting left off that Trump vice presidential shortlist was said to be especially embarrassing for Greene, given how much she publicly promoted Donald Trump. When Trump got indicted in New York, Greene compared him to Jesus. A few years ago, Greene even appeared with a Trump cardboard cutout and seemed to rub his crotch. And never mind the attachment to Trump, there is Greene's own insatiable ambition. When it became clear this summer that Greene was not even under consideration by Trump in his campaign, she became especially agitated in congressional hearings and seemed to have a very short fuse in television interviews. One can understand if Greene is melting down again, but this time over the Trump cabinet snub. Adding to Greene's potential feelings of betrayal and frustration, there are reports that Donald Trump has repeatedly made demeaning comments about Greene's physical appearance. Now, never mind the knock on Greene's looks, Donald Trump has allegedly told people close to him that Marjorie Taylor Greene generates too much attention, and Trump reportedly thinks that Greene could take attention away from him. Trump associates also say he was put off earlier this year when he told Greene to back off her efforts to dump Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, and Greene tried to move forward anyway. The outcome was a debacle for Greene, and reportedly convinced Donald Trump that for all of Greene's fire and brimstone and loyalty to him, Marjorie Taylor Greene is ineffective and widely detested in both parties. Over the past 18 months, Greene has had public spats with several staunch conservative Trump supporters in Congress, including Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz, and Greene has repeatedly been sanctioned by Republican committee chairs for her over-the-top behavior at House hearings. Several Trump campaign staff allegedly referred to Greene as low class when she attacked the Biden family not by highlighting financial transactions, but rather by repeatedly displaying pornographic pictures of Hunter Biden. Greene's antics opened the door for Democrats, including Jared Moskowitz, to talk about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. The concern in the Trump inner circle is reportedly that Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't think things through and is largely despised by Republicans on Capitol Hill in addition to the Democrats. So there's really no upside for Trump to even consider putting Greene in his cabinet. The only consideration might be for MTG's feelings. But Greene has made it clear she's never going to say anything negative about Donald Trump. In other words, even when disrespected and snubbed, Marjorie Taylor Greene has no self-respect. With Donald Trump, she's like that jilted ex-girlfriend who keeps lavishing praise and publicly defending the ex-boyfriend in the hopes that maybe someday, somehow, they will get back together. It's pathetic. And to Donald Trump, it's reportedly not the sort of thing he wants in a key cabinet position like the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. So MTG is out of luck. She's considered even more embarrassing than dog killer Kristi Noem. And it's worth noting, as some of us may point out whenever we mention Noem, that the Department of Homeland Security has over 3,000 dogs. Thankfully, the fate of all of those animals will be up to the DHS dog handlers, although Noem will have administrative and budgetary responsibilities over the various agencies that deploy the dogs and employ over 250,000 human beings who work for DHS around the globe. If Marjorie Taylor Greene is envious of Noem's power, perhaps Greene should just be patient. In Donald Trump's first administration, he cycled through 5 DHS secretaries. So if Noem lasts, say, more than a year and a half, that would be surprising. Also, the job itself may be bewildering to Noem because, for example, DHS oversees the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, and Noem doesn't exactly have a lot of experience in South Dakota preparing for or responding to hurricanes. So maybe the job of DHS secretary will be available to Marjorie Taylor Greene down the road. Or maybe Greene will keep getting snubbed because, after all, she is Marjorie Taylor Greene and the president-elect is Donald Trump. And as awful as Trump is, by most accounts, Marjorie Taylor Greene is even crazier. By the way, the Trump transition team is reportedly getting weirded out by the constant presence of Elon Musk. Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube, one of the most popular from Winston, who wrote, "Don't worry, Elon, Trump got what he wanted out of you." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about Donald Trump rejecting Marjorie Taylor Greene and humiliating her yet again. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for joining us.